Hello, everybody. My name is Sigil, and welcome to the first installment of my Kitchen Witch Thursday series. Now, basically, this recipe, back in 2012, my mother decided that she was going to go on a 2 week trip to Europe, and she took me with her. And we spent most of that time in London. And while we were in London, Buckingham Palace was actually open for tours. It was the time of the year when the Queen was away elsewhere, and they had opened up the palace so we could go in and take a look. My mom had gotten us tickets to that. And when we came out the back end of the palace, there was a little cafe where you could get British, like, sweets and drinks and things of that sort. And so we ordered sort of a sampler platter for the sweets. And when we were getting our drinks, I saw something called London Fog Tea. And it was kind of a dreary day. It had been raining all day, typical London weather, I suppose. And I was like, yeah, tea, like that'll warm me up, that'll be nice. And so I ordered some, and it looked really pretty, and I took a sip, and I was in love. And when we came home from London, I was like, okay, I want to try to make this for myself. And every recipe that I found online was calling for premium black tea, a special kind of sugar. They wanted you to like steam your milk and then have one of those little foamers, and I got really discouraged and ended up not doing it. And about 3-ish years later, 12, 13, 14, probably about four years later, so somewhere around 2016, was when I started this process of relearning how to cook in a way, because I have been cooking since I was very small. But it was always like my grandmother's recipes, and it was never anything that was supposed to be like super fancy. And I started watching a lot of cooking shows, Great British Bake Off, Chopped, things like that. And it is really nice to see that there are people out there who can make something, and they're lucky enough to have access to the money and the things that they need, the fancy KitchenAid stand mixers or a milk foamer or things like that. But looking at my own situation, it's like I don't, and there's a good chance that I never will have access to those things. And I know there are a lot of people out there like that who, would love to make some of the things that they see, but when they see that it calls for expensive ingredients or a very specific technique or a very specific piece of equipment that they don't necessarily have or can't afford, they just kind of go, well, I guess I'm not going to do that. And so 2016 was kind of my revelation of, I want to see how many of these I can take and make basically cheap. I feel like that's not entirely the correct word, but not using the premium ingredients and finding ways to circumvent having, the fancy equipment. And London Fog Tea was the first thing that I tried to make when I had sort of had this revelation, and so that's why I feel that it's super fitting for the first video of this particular series. And so honestly, it's not that difficult. If you take out like foaming the milk and steaming your milk and the sort of premium ingredient aspect to it, it's very cheap and it's not that hard. So all you're really going to need is one tea bag, or if you're using any sort of loose leaf tea, about a teaspoon of black tea. English breakfast or Earl Grey is sort of the traditional in there. I happen to have like some pumpkin spice and a couple other sort of black teas that I think work really nicely with this. Orange. I have like an orange chai black tea that works really well with this too. Something with a little more flavor to it. But anything that is basically labeled as being a sort of black tea will work. You're going to want about 1.5 cups of water, a teaspoon of any kind of sugar you like. We literally just happen to have Truvia packets. I just put a packet in there. A teaspoon of vanilla extract. We have imitation vanilla extract here. Like, no joke, I use it for baking all the time. I don't need like the premium vanilla extract or vanilla beans or whatever. Like, it just is what it is. Half a cup of milk, any kind of milk will do. And for you non dairy people, almond milk or milk substitutes will work just fine. I just recommend getting either like vanilla or generally sort of the unflavored plain variety. Unless you want to add a little more flavor to this, because chocolate milk is also really good. I've done that before too. I've played so much with this recipe, it's not even funny. Um, and then on top of all of that, optionally, you can add half a teaspoon of other ingredients. My favorites being rose petals and lavender buds. I happen to have a source of like food grade quality herbs, but if you don't have those, don't worry about it. They do just add a little extra flavor, but it's perfectly fine without it. So the next thing you want to do is you want to, not the next thing, but you want to gather up all of your ingredients, and basically you want to boil your water. And while the water is boiling, basically assemble your tea. I have tea bags, and when I do the optional, when I add rose petals and lavender, we have tea balls for loose leaf. So I just kind of dump them in there. It's not a big deal. Once your water is boiling, pour it into a cup and steep your tea for about 4 minutes. Also, the optional ingredients if you're using them. Once that's done, take everything out so you're left with just the liquid, and then add the sugar, vanilla, and milk. Literally just plain and simple, dump all that in there, give it a stir, drink and enjoy. And it tastes fruity in a weird way, which is why I kind of said the orange spice black tea works really well in here, is because it kind of like cuts through the fruit a little bit and adds like a spice to it, but not so much that it's not still enjoyable. And it's really, really good. And I think, like, I've tried this without the milk before, and if you use chocolate milk, it definitely also has like a bit of sweetness, like a different kind of sweet that cuts through that fruit as well, which is kind of nice. But I've tried this without the milk, and the milk adds like a certain creaminess, sort of. That's not really a texture, but more of like just a creamy flavor that is really nice and complements this super well. And so all in all, it's just like is one of my absolute favorite things to make when it starts getting freezing outside, because it's just like it's warm and it's comforting and it's really, really tasty, and I really love it. Um, and so of course, like I said, it's literally just that easy. And this being a series of sort of imparting my kitchen witchery as well. Um, Personally, for me, this is a drink that is full of energy and love and relaxation. Because in my personal practice, black tea and sugar equate to a sort of energy. People drink black tea to wake themselves up in the morning. And sugar, obviously, the sugar high, the sugar rush. Like, that might not necessarily be true, but that's kind of what the association is there. Vanilla and milk sort of have this association with, like, a feeling of warmth and love. Rose petals are obviously for love, and lavender is very relaxing. People scent potpourri with it that you put under your pillow to help you sleep. You use it in a bath to help you relax. It's very relaxing, and so overall, this is a drink that is sort of a restorative energy. You drink it and it kind of helps wake you up a little bit if you're like falling asleep or something, but at the same time, it fills you with this sense of warmth and love, and the lavender kind of tapers out, and kind of relaxes this energy that is building up from the black tea and the sugar, so that way you don't get like the super overboard. You just kind of get enough to get you through whatever you're doing, sort of deal. So, like, personally, that's my associations with this particular drink. And there will be similar associations at the end of every recipe. So, with that being said, this has been London Fog Tea, Kitchen Witch style. I hope, you guys have enjoyed it. And if you really like what I'm doing, please don't forget to check the links down below. There is a link to my Ko-fi page, where you guys can, buy me a coffee, as they say. And for every 20th consecutive coffee, so it can be over any span of time, whatever, I will put out a second video the following week. So if you guys really like what I'm doing and want to see more, go buy me a coffee. Because the more you buy, the more of these I'm able to afford, and the more of these I can put out. So yeah, with that being said, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I will see you next week.